Morning everyone, it's Carol here at OHJ Journals, and as I'm always saying, a big warm welcome from me. Thank you so much for joining me. So on my desk here, these are the tags that I have made for the current OHJ Journals tag swap. The swap is actually live at the moment, so I'm sorry it's a bit too late if you want to join us this time round, although there will be another tag swap coming in a couple of months, so please watch out on my channel. So the suggested prompts for this tag swap was something recycled, a photograph, wrapping paper or digital paper. Just suggestions, and you don't have to use them at all. You can use one, you could use two, you can use all three, or you could use none at all. I decided that I would go with all three, and these are the tags that I've made that are ready now to go out to my tag swap partners. So at the end of the video, I will do a quick tutorial showing you how I've made and put together these tags, and I will also include a couple of alternatives because these tags use magnets, and I know not everybody is happy playing around with magnets. So all of these tags are exactly the same, so let me just move them to one side. As you can see, there's my photograph. I've made a little frame, I've put some lace on, and that's the back. You could put a journaling spot on the back if you wanted to, and there are magnets which hold that in place on my tag. There's a little pocket at the back, and this is my recycled item. So this was a thread card from Cottage Garden Threads, and I've just put some little samples of paper and whatever in that. So that goes in the back pocket like that. If I take this off, this is the front of my tag, and as you can see, I've just got a hole at the top there for my ribbon to go through. Now, to access the main part of the tag, that ribbon needs to be unwrapped, but I can show you that inside this flap there is a little journaling spot, and inside this flap there is another little journaling spot. And I'm just going to undo that ribbon. There you go, you can see those journaling spots in all their glory there. Let me just take that out as well. And if I open up the tag, whoops, that's catching. Obviously got a little bit of glue caught there. That's the inside of my tag. Another photograph. I've just put some protective paper there and just some vintage paper behind. And this image is attached to my tag with some clear photo corners, so you could take it out, change it up if you wanted to, and put another one in there. Or what you could do, I'm struggling to see where to put these now, what you could do is use this as a hidden journaling spot. So let me just get that corner under, and this final corner under as well. There we go, like that. As I say, yes, you could use that photograph as a little hidden journaling spot. That protective piece comes down like that, and as I showed you before, I've got a couple of journaling spots in there. And that pocket at the back had this in. But if you didn't want to include a pocket on the back, you could use the magnets that are on the back to adhere this to your page in your journal, and it would stay put. But you would need to put obviously some magnets on your page as well. So let me go ahead and show you how I made these tags. Nothing very difficult at all. So let me just pop my ribbon back in place. There we go, that's my bow tied again, and let me show you how I've made these tags. Okay, so for the frame on top of the tag, I use this. Now this is a genuine photo frame out of an old album. It has seen much better days. If I flip it over, you can see why. I've got sellotape down here holding it together. The back is ripped, and this is part of the binding, but it is brilliant for photocopying. So that's exactly what I've done. So I photocopied my frame here, and I reduced it down by 70%. Now, as you can see if I put the two together, my photocopier is absolutely appalling for getting a good copy of the colour. But in some instances, and this is one of them, I don't actually mind. So I've ended up with a almost grey blue frame here, and I just trimmed out this aperture, and in good Blue Peter style I've got one off to the side that I've already done. So as you can see, I've just cut out the centerpiece. This is just plain 160 gram GSM white paper, or lightweight cardstock really, at 160 GSM, but it's absolutely fine for this because we're going to be backing it anyway. So I've just cut out the center there, and then I would go in with my scissors and I would just, as close and as neatly as I can get, chop around that inner section there, and as I say, it gives me that. So then I have my photo. Now I've got a spare copy for this last tag that I'm doing, and all I did was just center my image inside the frame like that, just get her to sit how I want her to look. And if I flip her over, you can see that I have quite a portion at the bottom here that is larger than the actual frame that I want. So all I did for that was I just eyeballed roughly where I wanted to tear it, and just do that, and literally just ripped it away. Probably a little bit neater than that, so I will trim that with a pair of scissors. So let's quickly do that. I have to say, when I ripped it before, it ripped neater, but obviously because the camera is on. So now she fits nicely inside the frame like that. And now that I've trimmed down, the back of the photo looks like that. Now, because this corner here and this one are going close to this top edge and this one here, I'm going to trim across those corners because I want to sit my magnets in those corners. So I'm just going to just trim away a small portion, and you can measure it if you want to, but I'm not going to. I just need to know that I've got enough room to be able to sit my magnets in those corners. All I'm going to do now is put a little bit of glue all round the inside of my frame and all round the outside of my photograph, and glue the photograph to the frame. For my magnets, I'm using up some old magnets that I bought a while ago. I bought them off Amazon, and if I remember, I'll put the link in the description box down below. Now, I usually use a lot smaller than these, but as you can see, I've got quite a few here that I haven't used for a while, and I've got too many, so I want to use them up, but I also want to make sure that they are going to stick well. I like to use double-sided tape because I know that with my magnets they don't work well if I get any glue on them. So I've got my double-sided tape here, I've got my magnet, and I'm just going to center it a little way from the edge. I'm going to line up the edge of my double-sided tape on here, and then I'm going to run it down the edge. I've got my finger stopping it going right to the edge because I'm going to grab another magnet off my pile. I'm going to pop that in place like that and just bring my tape down and over it. And all I'm doing is making sure that I have some tape all the way around my magnet. So let me just trim off this piece like that, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. So I'm just going to make sure that those magnets are nicely stuck down with tape all the way around them, and then I'm just going to take a little bit more tape and run it across the top and bottom where I have some gaps. Now I'm just going to peel away my backing here, take my art glitter glue and just run that over the center portion. And the word of caution here, you can get it onto the tape as much as you like, do not get it on your magnets. If you do, your magnets won't work when you want them to. and I like to just put a little bit along the edge there, so be careful of that. I've got a scrap of the paper that I've made the tags out of, and I just want to use this portion. Just work your photo frame in place and then just go in and cut round the edge or trim it round the edge. And there we go. You can go round and ink those edges if you want to. I'm not going to, or not at the moment anyway. I would suggest that if you want to stitch round your photo frame, I'm not going to because this has got a nice ornate border and I think it would spoil it. But if you do want to, and you're just using not a photo frame, you're just using a piece of cardstock with an aperture, I would suggest that you stitch it first before you add your magnets, because you're going to find it really difficult to stitch with your magnets in place. And similarly, I'm not going to stitch the lace that I'm adding to this because my stitching would show through on the reverse and I don't want that. So again, I would suggest you do that before you attach your magnets if that's what you want to do, or the look that you want. For the main part of my tag, I've just worked mine to a size of tag that I like to work in for my journals, and this is a Ranger size 8 manila tag. So my base tag is 3¼ inches wide by 6¼ inches high, or in centimetres by 8 centimetres wide and 16 centimetres in height. But the way I'm going to show you for folding your cardstock to get the shape that you want, you can make this in any size that you want. You don't have to particularly do any measuring at all. So I've got a piece of just copier paper, but what I've worked in is that lightweight cardstock, 160 GSM cardstock. But all I've done is I've printed out the designs that I want double-sided, and as you can see, I've got a border going all the way around here. Now what you want to do is you want to trim off the border all the way around, but you need to trim it so that you get the height that you want. So if I bring in another piece of cardstock here, if I put that out of the way, you can see that I've trimmed this sheet of paper. You probably see it better if I use the other side. I've trimmed this sheet of paper to the height of my tag, which is 16 centimetres. And all I'm going to do now is score it in a couple of places. And to do that without any measuring at all, put my sheet of paper onto my scoreboard. I'm using my manila tag as my guide. I've butted both of them up to this left hand edge, and then I'm just going to score down the side of my tag, and I'm just going to fold that over and just make sure that my edges are level. And looking at this, I have not trimmed that exactly square, so I've got a little overlap. So I'm going to need to trim that. Okay, so I've got my fold there and I've folded it over. And again, I'm just putting my tag in that corner and I'm just going to score down there like that. And then this time I'm going to fold it over this way, and again I'm just going to make sure those edges are lined up and reinforce that crease. Now, as you can see, I have a bit of an overlap. If I open this out, you can see I've got my two folds in there, and I have a bit of an overlap here, which I don't want. So all I would do for that is just run a pencil down that edge, bring in my guillotine and trim it off. Now, in one of the variations, you will see that I actually left this piece in place, and I'll show you that variation at the end. So let me lift this out of the way now. What you could do is you could put a score line down the centre of this panel here and a score line down the centre of that panel there. But what I like to do, the lazy way, is I like to take this edge and fold it to that first fold. And then for this piece, again, take this edge and fold it out to this edge, but being very careful this time that you butt the fold up with this edge. And it is easy to do. So I'm just going to pop that down there like that, and over to there. And just press it into place like that. You should have a neat edge on this side and that side like that. Now, as I mentioned before, I hadn't got this cut quite square along the bottom there, so I'm just going to trim that off to make sure that it is square. And that is the basic tag shape. I'm just going to trim across those corners. And my little tag looks like that. Got one of these slotted punches here, and I'm just going to hold my tag closed at the top and just roughly eyeball where I want to punch so that I have that. I hope you can see that. There we go. And if I open it up, I get that. So I have one of those holes, slotted holes at the top. So that's the basic tag. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch all the way around the outside edge. You don't have to do that. I just like to have stitching on my tags, so I'm going to do that. I'm also going to look out some papers and stitch those across the top here so that I've got something of interest inside. If you wanted, you could put a vellum pocket inside there. That's another option. On the reverse, this is where your magnets are going to go. Now, I don't want my magnets to show. I want them to be protected and hidden. So what I've done is I've just cut out another piece of card, lightweight card in the same design as you can see. And this time, whilst I've used the basic tag shape, as you can see, it is longer, and that's so that I can fold a portion up and create a little tuck spot at the bottom there. Now, this piece is 20 centimeters in length. If you remember, the tag that I'm working to was 16 centimeters, and I've just made this just the size to give me a couple of centimeters at the bottom here, so that when it's glued on the back, my magnets are hidden and I've got a little pocket. Now, whilst I'm doing my stitching on this, I'm also going to do some stitching all the way around the outside of this as well, so that when it's glued onto the back there, I've also got the stitch detail showing. And again, as I said before, if you don't like stitching, you don't have to do that. So I'm going to take this away, or both pieces away, to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch them, and I will be back in a moment. So the tag is stitched all the way around, and I've chosen some papers for inside. I've got a full image of the one that I used for inside the front frame. I've got some vintage book text here, and I've also got some of this, it's like deli paper, but it came out of this stamp book, and it is the sheets that protect the stamps when they're in place. So I've trimmed all of this to size, or more or less. I'm just going for something very, very simple inside. I'm going to have a little layer of paper down there. I'm going to have this just inside like that, and I'm probably going to just rip across the bottom here like that. Let me just position this up very, very quickly, just off to the right hand side. This more or less centered, so I'm going to put a bit of glue behind this. I've left a tiny little white border around the outside of my picture, and I've got here, I'm not sure if you're going to pick them up in this light, but these are transparent and self-adhesive photo corners. So I'm just going to grab 4 of these. Sorry, the sun's streaming through the window this afternoon and it's absolutely gorgeous, but I'm hoping it's not going to be too difficult for you to see what I'm doing. And I'm just positioning the photo corners on the edge of each corner, peel up the last one. I thought it might be nice to have the photo removable so that the recipient of the tag can change it out if they want to. So I'm just going to position that on there. I haven't got any guidelines where I am, so I'm just going to have to eyeball it as best I can, and I think that's about right there. So give that a good press. As I say, I've got this paper. Now this is slightly shorter than the tag, but I've turned it over at the edge, and the reason I've done that is so that I can hook it over the top like this. Just make sure it's where I want it to be, and just close up my tag. I'm going to hold that in place, and then I'm going to just glue this flap on the reverse. So let me just do that. This will be hidden, so I'm just going to do that. Just going to trim off those corners, and that's what it looks like on the inside, and that will lift up completely. But what I thought I might do is just put a tiny little bit of glue along the top here, and I'm going to touch it with my finger just to make it not so wet, and pull this down and just press it down on the top there like that. Now of course we've got our eyelet punch there, so what I'm going to do is just redo that, and because this is almost transparent paper, I should be able to see exactly what I'm doing. I'm just lining up my slot again. To position your frame on the front and hold it in place with the magnets, because you've already got the magnets sandwiched inside the frame here, put the frame on the front of the tag where you want it to go, flip your tag over, and then just drop magnets onto the back, and obviously they are held in place by the magnets that are trapped inside your frame. When I did my first tag like this, I found that just doing those 4 magnets on the back was enough to keep the flaps on either side closed. But when I made the subsequent tags, I found that didn't work, which was absolutely strange because they're all configured with the same papers inside. Nothing is different. So to counter that, what I did was I actually put a couple of magnets inside the flaps. Now I've positioned my magnets in place here, but what I want to do is get these secured. So I'm just going to get a little of my double-sided tape, pop it over these magnets at the back. So I'm going to put a strip there. I'm going to glue my backing onto here, and one of them has just flipped off, so I'm just going to drop it, and I know that that is exactly where it needs to go. So let's just get this piece of tape in place like that, and I'm just going to give it a good burnish so that the magnet is trapped inside the tape. It's a little bit bulky because I've still got the cover or the frame on the front. And now I know that those will hold there as I want, ready for when I glue the back. Now if I just open this up slightly, you can see I've got 2 magnets in there. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to cover them over with some tape, and I'm going to make a little journaling spot in there. So this is how the tag looks now. I've just covered over the top with a piece of paper and stitched around it, and that will be my journaling spot, and that holds the flaps closed and this in place, and it keeps it nicely closed at the side. Now you're going to get a little bit of opening here and here at the top, but that's acceptable to me. That's fine. So to finish the basic tag off, all I'm going to do is take away the red covering on the double-sided tape, and I've made another tag shape that I've folded over as you saw before, and I've stitched around it, so I've got a little pocket here, And all I'm going to do is put glue on the back here, but make sure that there's no glue that is going to be covering those magnets, because as I've mentioned, I find that it doesn't actually, my magnets won't work if I get glue on them. So actually I'm going to put the glue on this piece. So I'm just going to pop it on the side there. Like that. And then that bends back. That goes on the top. Got a little bit of glue on there. That's not very good. And that will hold everything nicely closed in place. Now I'm going to put a little bit of decoration along the bottom of the frame at the front here. Before I actually get round to decorating the frame or the photo inside the frame, I'm just going to add a little bit of Distress Oxide Vintage Photo ink, and to actually decorate across the bottom I'm going to use a portion of this lace. Now it's very white, it's very contemporary, but I want to keep it fairly light and delicate. I'm going to pop it across the bottom there like that. I've also got a piece of this gorgeous applique lace that I bought off the internet. I think I got this from the Lace King, but I'm not absolutely sure, but I do have a couple of these little embellishments, so I thought I would use these, and I've cut one out here, so I've got one there to go on here, and I'm just going to have it coming off the side a little bit, maybe up a little bit like that. And I've got various labels here that I've punched out. Now these I've used, there you go, some scraps out of my scrap box here, just tiny little pieces, and I've used this Stampin' Up mini label punch, but I think these are EK Success, even though I got mine from Stampin' Up, but you can get these anywhere, but any little label will do. So I've punched some of those out, which I thought would marry in with the text that's on the music, and it also has a little bit of a vintage feel. I've got some little pieces here that were embossed that I used for dangles, I think, so I could use a portion of that behind, so I could use those. I've also got some of the little tags punched out in that, and I've got some other little labels. Now I really like these because these blend particularly well. And then I've got some blank ones here. So I'm going to use a mixture of all of that to do my embellishment just on the bottom of this, because obviously I can't go over onto this because it won't open. So I'm going to get on and get that done now. First thing I'm going to do is glue that piece on there, and I'm going to glue it so I hide that piece. So this is the frame decorated. As you can see, I've put a little bit of voile, Swiss stock voile behind it to soften the transition from the frame onto the tag. I've put a little label, I've put one of those little scrap tags there and this embellishment there, and that's what it looks like on the back. Of course, you could put a journaling spot on the back there, like I have in here, so that you've got something to write on, but that's blank enough for you to be able to write on top of that if you wanted to. I've also put a little bit of lightweight chiffon at the top here. I've not frou-froued it out very much. Of course, if you do that through the holes that we punched or through an eyelet, this would have to obviously be undone if you wanted to open the tags up. Sorry, I've got glue on my fingers there. Before you could open the tags up, because we've punched through this top flap. So there's my frame from the top, and I like how I've managed to get the voile to just curl as I've ripped it. I've also put some lace on the back here, and that's just to decorate my back pocket. Now for the something recycled, I've chosen these. Now these are the cards that CGT, Cottage Garden Threads, sell their hand-dyed embroidery threads on. It will sit inside the pocket there. I'm not going to do much in terms of embellishing this because it is a recycled piece. I am going to tie either some voile or some more of this chiffon to the top to soften that down a little bit. I could, if I wanted to, cover it with this this paper, and I do have some scraps off to one side, so I could potentially cover it with that if I wanted to, but I'm not going to because I want it to be readily apparent that this is a recycled piece. So the top I'm going to soften with some voile and tie it in with that, and hopefully make it look a little bit more cohesive with the lace at the bottom. And then in here, to again hit the recycled theme, I thought I would use some little pieces of paper out of my scrap box, such as that, and just secure them up in there. So some little pieces like that I thought would be nice to tuck up in there and then just go in this back pocket. So I'm going to get on with that now. These are what the recycled pieces look like now that I've put some papers inside. As you can see, I've just put an eyelet at the top and a little bit of the either chiffon or silk ribbon. I haven't glued these down completely so that you've got more access to ripping the papers out, but they are secured across the top, and in each one I've just put a random selection of papers out from my scrap box. So I've got some embossed vellum here, I've got an original document piece there, another piece there which I've folded over at the back, as you can see, like that, and then just a piece of the digital kit, and that's the backing, and they're all pretty much the same. Some have got slightly different papers in. This one's got some lovely brown paper in, ledger paper, and this one again just more of the same, vintage receipt, some of that hold paper that you get down the edge of notebooks, and brown paper, some of the digi kit. And then this one I changed up slightly. I've just put a little two-piece collage, if you will, a little bit of layering, and a few more papers in this one. There's a signature, there's some gorgeous handmade embossed paper, handmade paper there, vintage receipt. So yeah, just little bits and bobs. And because I had one of these left over, I just created another one rather than let it go to waste. And this time over the top, instead of putting a collage like that, I just put a piece from an old birthday card, I think it was. And again, another selection of papers in here. A few more in here. I wish I'd put more papers in these like I did with this one, because it doesn't bulk it up too much. And then to soften it at the back, I just put a plain piece of vellum before I secured it with the eyelet. So those are my pieces to go in the back of my tag, like that. And I promised that I would show you a couple of variations, because these obviously rely on magnets and not everybody is comfortable with the placement of magnets. So I created this one here. Now this one is a belly band behind the frame on the front. If I turn it over, you can see that's my belly band, and I've just put in a little, let me get my tweezers, I've just put in a little square of paper in this back pocket. Now this will slide off completely like that, and as I said, there is a pocket at the back here, and I just put some vintage lace on the back pocket, and it will open up if I undo the ribbon. So it's made in exactly the same way. There's my journaling strips inside, and I do have my photograph in there. I'm not going to undo the ribbon on this one because you know what they look like inside, but this is just my belly band. I haven't done anything on the back other than put this label on as a little bit of interest to show you, because this actually might be stuck to my journal page. If I bring in this piece of paper, this might be stuck to my journal page and have my tag just dropping down inside it like that. But until I decide what I want to do with it, I don't know. So I could, as I say, I could glue that to my journal page, or I could actually just clip it with a paper clip if I wanted to, or tuck it into a pocket. As you can see, I've just done some vintage lace along the bottom there, another piece there, just a button on that piece of lace there, and in this pocket here I've just put in a tiny little journaling card. I chose this one because it says photographer, and we were working on photographs and vintage frames, weren't we? And I've just backed it with a piece of the digital kit that I was using, so that goes in that pocket as a hidden journaling spot. So let me just tuck that in straight, if I can get it in straight. No thumb notch on this, so it's a little bit annoying, but I know it's in there, and this is for me, this one. So that's another variation on the theme, that you can hold your flaps closed without using magnets by using a belly band. But as you can see, once they've been in place a while and had those folds reinforced, it stays pretty shut. So I don't really need to put anything on the top here. I don't even need to put magnets on if I don't want to. So that's one option. The other option, very quickly, is this one that I'm working on, and I will show you the finished one at the end. This is the basic tag that I cut out. So there's your first flap, and I will have my journaling spot in there. And this is my second flap, and this is the bit that you would cut off down here like that to give you your other journaling spot in there. Now what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to use this piece here, instead of cutting it off, I'm going to use it as a flap. I've got my photograph here that's going to go on the front. Now I don't want to use a frame on this one, because if I do that, whilst it looks pretty enough, it gets lost. So what I thought I would do would be to use a bigger frame. So I've created one here like this, and this is going to go on the front of my tag like that. Yes, it's very busy, but I don't mind. This is for me, and it's going in my Oriental journal, so I'm not bothered that it's busy. But it will be exactly the same style of tag as previously, except I'm going to anchor this down on here, on this bit, which will be my flap. So again, no magnets, but what I am planning to do is use a little bit of seam binding or ribbon to do a tie at one side. Now, because I've got my hinge on this side, I'm going to tie it on this side. Whichever way you do your creases for your folds, you might decide that you want to have this flap on this side over here, like that. So I'm going to get on and finish this tag off, and I will show you all the tags at the end, all done and dusted, and you can see how this one works out. So I'll see you in a moment. So this is the alternative tag that I finished. So again, the one without magnets, and all I've done is I've put a little bit of lace and ribbon across the bottom here, and I've just glued this in place. I haven't stitched it. Originally, what I was going to do was I was going to embed a little bit of the ribbon behind the frame and wrap it round and tie, but the ribbon I actually used I didn't like when I put it in place, so I've cut that away and I've put this on because I think this is a better match. It's a little bit fussy, but I think it is overall a better match. And if I flip it over, that's what it looks like on the back. This piece of ribbon here is not attached, because if it was attached, you wouldn't be able to open up your tag. So all I've done is a simple tie at the side here. So if I pull this open, this is the flap that we've created, and as you can see, the ribbon isn't attached at the back. So for this flap behind the frame that I created, I've made a little belly band and put a little piece of paper there and done a little bit of stamping, and that's ready for a journaling card or something to go in that pocket or behind that belly band if that's what I want to do. These are my two flaps, so the original tag is like that without this. So this is the front of what would have been the original tag, and if I bring in one of these, that would have gone on the front like that. But because this one has got no magnets, these are held together with the ribbon. So if I just pull my ribbon up at the top there a little bit, or my bow up at the top, because I've used this slotted punch, I can just do that and my ribbon will slot into those little slits up there on the slots. So this is what the inside looks like, and again I've added a photograph, and I've just put a little piece of decorative red down there, and again I've got the film over the top. And then if I open this out, you can see I've got my journaling spots in place, a little bit of stamping there, and the same on this side, but we have to open this all the way out to get at this journaling spot. So that's another option if you don't actually want to use magnets, everybody. I just thought I would show you another option. Makes it a little bit easier, doesn't it, if you're not happy to place magnets, and I know not everybody is. So let me just quickly tie my ribbon here. So I'm just going to tie it up just with a simple pull through and a twiddle to get it to sit as I want it. And then this one, again, I just need to give it a little tuck and pull back into place to get that how I want it as well. So there we go, everybody. I hope you like seeing all these tags that I've been making the last couple of days. This one is not a tag swap tag. These ones are here that are all the same. So those are the ones that are going off to my tag swap partners, and these two alternatives are just to show you another way to do it so that you're not actually using magnets. So as always, everybody, photographs at the end, and a big thank you for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.